gastroenterologist knows, there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of factors that affect your digestion. So if you're able to capture more data, you should be able to do a better diagnosis.
Kind of crazy to me. You can walk around with an iPhone and record basically unlimited 4K video of anything you want. And for some reason in healthcare, our most precious asset, our health, our bodies, we're not saving this data is a little bit crazy to me. I still feel like there's a huge opportunity to add a digital layer to what's going on in GI and endoscopy at large.
Any health conscious person that has an Oura ring to track their sleep, that has a Whoop to track their physical activity, would benefit from tracking their bowel movements so that they see what their diet and lifestyle does. I mean, regularity and gut health is health and happiness for the person.
The great thing about technology is that it's exponential, the rate of change. And so I think it's going to take people a little bit by surprise. When AI and these big data things kick in, people at the moment are kind of in a little bit of a skeptical mode. It's been around and talked about for so long that that's been kind of flying under the radar, the amount of progress that's just being made. And at the moment, I think it's about to have a breakout, and we're going to enter this kind of zone of surprise where people are going to discover that the exponential rate of change is going to be quite surprising.
In MIT, I come there with an open mind, trying to explore all the webs. And one of the first few technologies which I see is the use of computer vision in autonomous vehicles. And I was like, that's super cool. But also, why don't we have this in medicine? Why can't we have this in healthcare? Because to me, that represented a major barrier to patients receiving equitable healthcare, right? And as equitable an outcome as possible.
A lot of people realize now that new tech like AI doesn't just replace work. But what I think they're missing is that it does change how work is organized. So in the future, I don't think you're necessarily going to see an algorithm or a doctor, or even a doctor with an algorithm. I think you're going to see networks of people and computers working together to solve all sorts of data annotation and diagnostic problems.
Being able to watch our evidence-based interventions work over and over and over, and even if a patient doesn't have complete alleviation of their symptoms, their confidence to manage their symptoms gets better.
Hiring a GI psychologist is something that you're wanting to do from a financial side, from a patient treatment burden, and just helping clinicians understand their patients more, develop empathy for those symptoms. It's really rewarding for myself, but also the team that I work with.
We're going to increase the number of colonoscopies with a positive finding. So bring the patients in that aren't getting screened today into the pool, but also the patients that would require a colonoscopy because they have some sort of positive finding will be the ones that are going through for a colonoscopy.
There's been varying degrees of success amongst the platforms that have been created in the market. And so the ones that I would place on the spectrum of more successful relative to others, like they're in good position to exit. The ones that I would place on the farther end of the spectrum in terms of having a success post-transaction, they're probably going to have to hold on to the assets quite a bit longer. My actual suspicion is that you'll start to see those organizations get acquired by the ones that do have successful exits with their next partner.
We're hearing alternative ideas anyways. We're watching Cologuard, and we're watching a lot of the world shift in all of the genomics that are happening. And I really thought there's a good chance that we're overutilizing colonoscopy, that the world is coming together to probably impact that in the next how many years. I'm a 2 to 5 year thinker kind of, and it seemed like it was going to hit in that window. Because of that, and because it had not been like the mainstay of my day to work, I felt like there were more opportunities here to look outside. What would I do with my time if I'm not doing as many colonoscopies? And it was refreshing. It's like a thought experiment, right?
As a gastroenterologist, all those procedures I did, all those lives I touched, hopefully all those cancers I prevented, all those people who I went to see in the middle of the night, that made a difference in people's lives. But then there were days where I wondered whether colonoscopy after colonoscopy was actually serving the greater good for me, like when, or for people. If the end game is to prevent cancer for the bread and butter gastroenterologist, are there more effective ways to do that? And that is coming to the forefront now.
Unless the GI practices take their heads out of the sand, there's going to be other arrangements. When you see large self-funded employers, big ones, and you know the names of the big ones, becoming providers of payviders. They're becoming payviders. They're paying for the care and they're employing providers to provide the care in their retail outlets. And they're building this on primary care. Do you really think they're going to go knocking on the doors of all the individual GI practices to see if they want to participate as specialists in their national networks? No, they're going to engage large companies that are industrializing this space while disintermediating the GI practices. I think this is a big threat to GI.
My partner and I have a long history of working with physician founders and physician investors, and they're innovating the next big thing. I mean, they're right in the epicenter of changing the way that we live our lives.
I watch the show and I pass around your weekly digest. I mean, we're all trying to figure out what the next thing is. Of course, we're all looking at private equity and how that's going to affect not just GI, but us. You know, private equity can provide a lot of resources that we historically have done. AI from a standpoint of, you know, how do we address physician burnout? Because we see volume coming through, multiples increasing in GI because the lowering of the screening age and just the multiple therapeutics. So I really wish I had an answer. I'm kind of exhausted just from getting us to the opportunity fund, but we'll keep looking.
I think the problem that I have is not maybe necessarily a GI problem. I think it's just a healthcare issue. And I think the healthcare issue, and something that I'm very passionate about, is that healthcare is the only market where the end user doesn't really have a voice. I think at the end of the day, we talk a lot about patient centricity, but unless you are a patient, there's always that little gap. And I think that being patient centered is different than being patient driven. And patients being founders, I think, is something that I'm really excited about that we're seeing in this space as well as other spaces.